Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zachariah Jambo, and my friends call me Zach. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit more about myself and my story. My story begins on a cloudy morning in November 1998 with a 3-day journey out of the dust and scorching heat of Khartoum. Across 2,000 kilometers of desert via boat, train, and bus. For me, as a 3-year-old, this was all exciting. But for my mom, this was a chance for us to seek safety out of Sudan, which was then Africa's largest country. Sudan, through its history, from 1955 all the way to 1972, experienced its first civil war. The second civil war started from 1983 all the way to 2005. During those two civil wars, 2 million people lost their lives and millions were displaced across the regions. Little did we know that our new destination, Cairo, was not going to be any different from living in Khartoum, where we experienced religious and ethnic discrimination. For 13 years of my life, my mom, my 2 sisters, and I lived in the neighborhood of Hadaq al-Mahdi, where most of the Sudanese refugees who fled the Sudanese civil war in the 90s have been living. Our new life was safe, but we're still refugees. We're regarded as other and seen as separate. Even though the UNHCR office was in Cairo, and Egypt is a signatory of the 1951 Refugee Convention, we did not have access to jobs, healthcare, or education. The UNHCR office was miles away. It required waking up early, taking a metro and a bus. Sometimes there would be long lines, and then sometimes we'd be told to go and then come back tomorrow. And the refugee determination status itself took months. And during those months, a lot of Sudanese refugees would have to stay and live in fear of being arrested and deported back to Sudan. I remember one day, as my mom told me to stay quiet, as policemen were knocking at our door, only for them to knock at our neighbor's door and then arrest them on the spot. For a lot of Sudanese refugees at that time, the UNHCR represented an organization that was full of empty promises and programs that were not fulfilled. It was about staff that were unqualified, an organization that was also understaffed. But for them, it was their only hope of gaining access and recognition. While living in Egypt, I and many other refugees experienced physical harassment, experienced being called names and receiving curious looks. Being called black, dark, or chocolate was the norm. Sometimes we'd get asked questions like, why are you here? Why are there so many of you? What are you doing in our country? You've made everything so expensive. For most of my education, primary and high school, most of it was done in a 12 by 12 classrooms in an apartment block that was on the ground floor, on a ground floor of an apartment block. Most of these refugee education centers were set up by Sudanese community leaders and supported by church organizations. Sometimes the residents of those buildings would tell us to not make noises. They'll complain about noise. And sometimes they'll call the police and the police will shut down the school. And that was the case for me. Instead of being in a classroom learning and trying to catch up, I was forced to stay at home for 12 months, waiting and hoping that one day that another school close by would open. It was at moments and experiences like that that I felt hopeless. I was full of self-hatred for myself. I did not like the environment that I was in. I did not feel welcomed. I felt like it was all my fault why why was I even born in this world? But luckily, I had my mom who always pushed me to look beyond the circumstances and had community leaders, teachers, and most of all, my mentor who pushed me to see beyond my current circumstances, to see that I might be a beacon of hope to other people out there, and that education could be my way out of all this misery. In my case, I was lucky. I had those people around me. But for a lot of refugees around the world, they do not have that kind of exposure or someone to help them. For me, my journey moved from being in a small refugee school called African Hope Learning Center to going to my first accredited school, Cairo Covenant School, and graduating from there with a high school diploma, and being able to fly all the way to attend the African Leadership Academy in Johannesburg, South Africa, and being exposed to other cultures, other opportunities that are the reason why I am standing in front of you today, speaking. But that is not the case for many out there. And because of my personal experience as a refugee, I believe that in a globalized world, humanity and human lives should always come first. But until that day comes, I urge every refugee in every camp, in every city, who is either feeling difficulties or discrimination, to not give up, to continue hoping that maybe one day humanity in this world will prevail and that they will have a better life. Thank you.